This is the Footbrawl Podcast with your hosts, Tyler, Andy, and Boyer.
Welcome back to the Mantasy Footbrawl Podcast, presented by your performance-enhancing dads. I'm Tyler, your host. We got the lesser Tyler, Boyer, and we got Stu. What's going on, fellas?
Not much. How goes it?
Okay.
Oh, not too bad. We're gonna recap my week. Wasn't happy about it. But we're moving forward with week 2. So they'll all hear how bad I was this week. We have no trades this week, which is rough. We're already working on getting into week 2. We got to start getting into those trades. Injury and news. Fitzpatrick will be out for a while. I'm not really sure what that's going to affect. Gibson will still get his work. They'll still target McLaurin. I think Logan Thomas might actually benefit from this. So we'll see. Mostert went down. He tweeted out that he's out for the year. So here goes some shenanigans in the Kyle Shanahan offense. Is it Hasty going to come up all of a sudden? Does Trey Sermon get the look? Is it Elijah Mitchell that stays the starter? I don't know. We all thought Sermon was going to be the guy this last week, and by we all thought, I mean mostly me said play Sermon, and that was don't do that. So I don't know what to do about that backfield. So here we go. Here's to guessing. More to the Niners. Ayuk doesn't get a ball thrown his way. So I'm not sure what this doghouse is looking like for this coming week. Other than that, the Niners are all sorts of a mess. Boyer loses Jerry Jeudy. Looks like maybe Tim Patrick comes in to take over Judy's role. But other than that, expect that offense to be pretty similar with or without Jeudy at this point. Anything you guys want to add to those?
Yeah, Judy's got the high ankle sprain, which sounds like it's going to be, I've heard 4 to 6, I've heard 6 to 8. High ankle's not what you want. So honestly, if I'm a Judy owner, I'm hoping that it's closer to the high end of that so that they can get him fully healthy and back to it and hopefully back to where he needs to be, because otherwise that's something that could cause issues for the rest of the year if they rush him back. So we'll see, but it's not just a couple of weeks kind of thing. It's going to be a good chunk of the year.
Yeah, I watched that play live, and it looked like he shattered his leg. So this was a good thing.
This was good news for sure.
It looked like the Dak Prescott injury from last year.
Yeah. So we'll see how all these injuries play out, but it's and how the Niners in general play out, because not sure what Shanahan's doing. But let's jump into a week 1 recap. See how we did on predictions. Andy, you want to run us down predictions and how we did?
Yeah, Boyer was the leader this week. He picked 4 out of the 6 right. I had 3. Ty had 2. I was the only one that picked me to beat Colin. Boyer was the only one that picked Jeremy over Ty. Boyer was the only one that picked himself to beat Charlie. We all missed on Fryer. We all hit on Chris and Paul. So that's a quick rundown.
All right, Boyer, jump into some of those matchups.
Yeah, so Yahoo starts me on my own matchup. The big one here is really just that Charlie shit the bed a little bit. Really didn't get enough points from some of his big players. Zeke has struggled. Tyler Boyd struggled. Eckler didn't get a target, which was interesting. Gesicki goose-egged. Hardman had 1.9 points. So rough week for Charlie, more than anything. Going into Jeremy versus Ty, Jeremy had everybody do really well. That Kyler Murray keeper is looking really good right now. Joe Mixon looks really good. I was a big proponent against him, but there's egg on my face today, I suppose.
You're still a proponent against him. Don't lie.
I still am, but there's egg on my face this week for sure. Ty had a really good week, just didn't have enough firepower to beat out Jeremy. Looking at Chris versus Walker. Walker looked real strong right off the start, but 1.3 points from Aaron Rodgers. Interesting note, if Aaron Rodgers throws it into the ground on every throw, I think his passer rating would be like 36. He ended up with like a 32 passer rating or something like that. So that's how bad of a game Rodgers had. With that said, Jalen Hurts had a good game against the Falcons. AJ Brown, Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon all stepped up for Chris. Chris gets the win there with 95 points. Duo over Fryer. Fryer's still doing Fryer things. He was projected for 112 points. He managed 84. Biggest issues there was his wide receivers. Mike Evans didn't do much. Claypool didn't do much. Mostert went down early, which hurt him a lot. Meanwhile, the duo did get decent games from Miles Sanders, which was a little bit of a surprise. And a lot of his guys got close to or at double digits, which helped push him up. Andy, Project Mayhem, beat out Colin. Despite a weak game from Justin Herbert, he managed to get big points from Chubb, big points from Kareem Hunt. He was super right for that backfield, specifically in this Chiefs game for week 1. Kelsey gave him 19 points. Hawkinson in the flex with 17. A couple great moves by Andy to start off the season. Colin just didn't have the firepower. Diggs didn't do great. Harris had a three yards per carry average, if I remember right. Just his guys just didn't pan out for him. Lastly, Paul and Robbie were in a battle to the ends. Robbie had the win at one point. He was up by 0.1, 0.2, something silly. Josh Jacobs ran backwards 2 yards and cost him the dub. So good, terrible for Robbie, great for Paul. That's gonna be your week 1 recap.
I think Robbie's still praying to the stat correction gods for the rest of the week, but
it
can go through like Thursday, so it's possible.
Dumb.
We've
I
seen
hate
it
stat corrections. It's so dumb.
All right. So let's run through a quick, what did we learn this week in the NFL? Go ahead, Andy.
All right. So I'm going to try not to rant too long on this because I've done a lot of that these last couple podcasts, but fuck beat writers. They're not your friends, guys. Their job is to report on the one and only team that they are around and observing all the goddamn time, but they don't do that. What they effectively boil down to is they're just hype girls for their team, and they only report what the team wants them to report to the public, and that's it. So when Trey Sermon got benched effectively an hour before game time on Sunday, immediately there's reports about how, well, Elijah Mitchell and Jamaica Hasty just outplayed him in camp, and Shanahan felt that they were the better backs. Like, where the fuck was that these last 3-4 weeks? Nobody has said anything about that. But as soon as the news comes out, then the reports are there like, oh, well, clearly, he just didn't play as well. He got outplayed and lost his spot, and that's what happened, guys. That's the information that we have that we're not giving you until an hour before game time. Everybody in the fantasy world's been drafting Trey Sermon over Raheem Mostert because of his upside and his draft capital that the Niners invested in him. And maybe with the injury, he ends up getting the opportunity and taking over. But Christ, what is going on there? And the same thing with Brandon Ayuk. As soon as I forget the guy's name, as soon as the guy caught the touchdown from Trey Lance, Sherfield, thank you. As the tweets are coming out and the beat writers are like, oh yeah, Sherfield played just as well as Ayuk, and with the hamstring injury, Shanahan was just really feeling that Sherfield was going to be the guy. And it's like, where was this? this information just came out of nowhere as soon as it was allowed to be shared, I suppose.
Okay, real quick, let me jump in. If you did watch, there was a preseason game Hasty went off in. Elijah Mitchell didn't ever really do anything during a preseason game that was amazing.
Sure.
Hasty looked good, scored a couple touchdowns, had some good runs in preseason. If you would have asked me who the number 3 was, it would have been Hasty over Mitchell based on preseason games. As a Niners fan, I try to follow at least some of the preseason, see where everything's kind of shaking out at. And everything said Sermon was the 2. So I didn't even, I wasn't worried about Sermon. Sermon was the 2. My question was, who was the 3? Was it Mitchell or was it Hasty? And watching some of the preseason games, Hasty would have been my bet. So how the hell Mitchell becomes the number 2 blew my mind.
Yeah, technically, Ty Hardy was the 3.
Hasty?
Or Hasty, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
you're right. You were right.
Anyway, keep going. Go ahead.
I mean, those are the big ones. Obviously, the Niners beat writers can all go jump in a lake. But like the James Robinson usage was very surprising and not at all reported on ahead of time. Even the Stafford Cup relationship, the announcers are talking about how Stafford and Cup show up to the stadium 2 hours early to practice running routes. They have breakfast together every day and all this bullshit that they're talking about instead of actually talking about what's going on the field during the game. And like I liked Stafford to be more of a Robert Woods guy. I did some research there. I felt like Woods profiled more as the type of receiver that Stafford would work with based on what his body of work was with the Lions. But shit, if you had told me that Stafford and Cooper Kupp were sucking each other's dicks from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. before anybody got to the stadium and then going and having brunch together, holding hands, yeah, I would have been a little bit more interested in Cooper Kupp. But nobody said anything until the middle of the game in week 1. So fuck beat writers. That's what I learned this week.
They say sex enhances performance on the sports field.
Yeah, that's the testosterone before the game. You got to do it the night before.
So is that what they're doing, Cup instead? I'm just confused.
They were
doing what before the game? Just curious. Boyer, go ahead. What'd you learn this week?
Yeah, man? Boyer, what did you learn?
I learned a lot of things this week, but I think my rant is going to be primarily on Urban Meyer and his coaching aptitude. Andy already touched on the James Robinson touches.
To call it aptitude.
James Robinson had very, very few touches, and he was a monster last year with the volume that he had on a bad offense. You would think with a rookie quarterback, you might want to lean on him a little bit, especially early, but no. In fact, they went with 7 straight passing attempts for Trevor Lawrence right off the start of the game, and game script did not help this going forward, but that doesn't mean you just completely bail on James Robinson. It makes no sense. The defense looked super unprepared for a team that I think most of everybody thought would be the worst team in the league by a wide margin in the Houston Texans. So for the Houston Texans to do that to the Jaguars is embarrassing from a coaching perspective. Now there's also reports that with the USC job coming potentially open, that Urban Meyer is really eyeing that job and leaving the NFL so soon. I think that that's kind of hysterical, just that everyone thinks he's a bad enough coach that he would just bail on the NFL and go coach at USC because he can't cut it in the big league. So
I think a lot of these college coaches that jump ship find that they're not great coaches. They're good recruiters. Like Nick Saban, all he has to do is go knock on the door of a 17-year-old and say, hey, do you like hot women and making money under the table? Because we can do that for you here. You'll be on national TV every weekend. And the little 17-year-old with stars in his eyes goes, I love you, Mr. Saban. I want to play for you. And he can get any 17-year-old that he wants with a very simple sales pitch of, you're going to come play for the number 1 team, aren't you? And that's the end of it. So like the college game is so very different than coaching the fucking Jaguars. Like the Jaguars got the number 1 pick last year for a reason. The Texans are bad and they should have beat the Texans, but the Jaguars are still bad. Trevor Lawrence isn't going to fix that overnight.
Yeah. So to me, everyone was looking at, Etienne when he was healthy. We thought that he was going to be a potential fantasy asset. I know Ty liked Chark, who did have a good game, not just because of garbage time. He was targeted relatively early and often. But man, it is disappointing to see just how rough coaching Urban Meyer was in his first game against a really bad team. And it just does not bode well for the Jaguars this year. They'll probably have the first overall pick next year, and Urban Meyer will probably be gone.
So real quick note on DJ Chark. He had a great fantasy line, 86 yards and a touchdown. He had 12 targets. He only caught 3 of them, so that's rough. You'd like to see more than a 25% catch rate, but production was there, so you can't complain too much. Something to keep an eye on, though.
Yeah, I mean, define catch rate. I mean, were they all catchable?
Fair. Still,
Eh,
3 out of 12, even if half of them aren't catchable, is still 3 out of 6. That's not great.
and he's already outproduced AJ Green from last year that had 100 some targets, so it's fine.
Truth. Ty, what'd you learn this week?
I learned that from last podcast, I have the best statistical analysis going into the week on starts and sits. So you should listen to me.
Minus Trey Sermon.
I mean, I didn't officially credit you with picking Ayuk to start this week because you didn't outright say it. You just asked me and Boyer who we thought, and we both said Ayuk. So there's a few things like that helped you out.
Also, I said you play whoever the number 2 running back is, and I just assumed it was Sermon based on all reports. Right? We've already talked.
We know who you meant.
All right. So I'm going to run through a couple. The Bears still suck. The Ravens have 0 weapons. Sammy Watkins did all right, but they're going to have a rough year. I know that all the injuries at running back have hit them.
Bateman should be back at the end of September, which could be a huge deal for them.
Yeah, I mean, they need it.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyson Williams did fine. Latavius Murray did fine. But, man, Lamar just needs a couple weapons on that team other than Sammy Watkins. I mean, Hollywood Brown's there, and he did fine too. But those two are not going to be able to carry that team. The Packers, I think this is a fuck you Packers from the Aaron Rodgers.
I love that conspiracy. I don't buy it at all, but the fact that it is a thing is hilarious.
I don't buy it. I don't necessarily buy it either, but I think Rodgers will bounce back. I think Packers are still a good team. I'm not worried about them. And one of my other facts is I'm always betting against rookie quarterbacks in their first week. Jacksonville didn't look great. The Jets looked okay, but I mean, Zach Wilson didn't look like.
Zach Wilson did not have time to breathe in that pocket. He was running for his life.
Right. And then you got Mac Jones. They kept up with the Dolphins, but to be honest with you, I'm not high on the Dolphins either. So
hey, Trey Lance and Justin Fields both had a touchdown.
You're not wrong. But they're both not starters. So you still don't bet on the rookie quarterback early in the season.
Truth.
Even if they're the starter. So with that, let's get out of that and move on to week 2 matchups. Boyer, you want to start us off with Andy and Robbie?
Uh-oh. We're losing him.
I hope he says, hold on.
He's
All
panicking.
Right. He had to run. There's a baby situation.
Oh, geez.
He just didn't know what to do.
We renamed the podcast Performance Enhancing Dads, and now Boyer's like, let me get my kids in.
The dad things.
I didn't know that was what we were dealing with. Should we pivot?
Yeah, Andy, jump into Jeremy Charlie since Boyer will come back to you and Robbie later on, apparently.
Sure. So I'll try to. Jeremy's always going to have a lineup decision. Allen Robinson against Cincinnati is on his bench currently. Lockett against Tennessee is a surefire start. Tennessee's secondary is hot garbage. We saw that against the Cardinals. We're going to see that a lot more this year. So for sure, you're starting Lockett. Godwin against Atlanta. Justin Jefferson against Arizona. You know, I have a hard time sitting either of those guys. I could see starting Robinson instead of Godwin. if you think that the Bucks Falcons game is going to be a blowout and they're not going to throw quite as much, but given the Bucks run game situation, the fact that it's a division matchup, I don't think that I'm scared off by that. So if this is my team, I'm leaving it the way he has it. I'm keeping Allen Robinson on the bench for the second week in a row, which is a real kick in the nuts when you spend $40 on a guy, but we already talked about that. So looking at a couple other things here, I do really like the Joe Mixon against the Bears. I think that the Bears' run defense is not great, especially if Eddie Goldman's still out. Kyler Murray against the Minnesota defense, which this last weekend did not look as though it had improved as though some had hoped. They made some moves to try to address that in the offseason, but I don't think that it's working. So Kyler Murray should have another pretty big game against the Vikings. Overall, I like Jeremy's team this week. Looking at Charlie, Lamar Jackson gets the Chiefs, which could be a huge game, kind of the same way the Browns were last week. There should be a lot of points put up on the board. Keenan Allen against Dallas. Dallas just got roasted by Tom Brady, and I'm hoping that the Chargers do the same. Charlie's got Devonta Smith in his lineup against the Niners instead of Mecole Hardman, which after last week definitely seems like a good choice. Mecole wasn't getting the looks, and Devonta Smith was, even though it's a tough matchup against the Niners. Good call there. And then Elliott and Eckler playing each other should both have some room to run for those guys. Mike Gesicki, I think, was Bill Belichick always runs his defense to stop the number one option of whatever team he's playing or whatever guy he wants to just eliminate. Last week it was Mike Gesicki, so I'm not super concerned. If he doesn't put up numbers this week, then I'll be a little bit more weary, but the goose egg last week doesn't bother me. It feels like a Belichick intentional kind of thing. So overall, I like both of these teams. I expect both teams to outdo their projections. But looking top to bottom, I'm going to lean with Jeremy here.
So I cracked my garage like this much, which hopefully will
lets the Wi-Fi in.
I don't know. It's currently working, so let's just hope for the best.
All right, so quick recap when we fill our viewers in on why the video jumps. Boyer's dog had to poop. Ty had to crack the door and let some Wi-Fi in.
All right, so with Jeremy's lineup, I would agree that I don't know that I'd start Allen Robinson again. I just don't like the quarterback situation. That whole offense didn't look great. And do you really start him over a Lockett, Godwin, Jefferson? This is Jeremy having too many wide receivers, too deep. You got to pick the guy to sit. The only way I sit somebody else is if come game day you find out that this projected rain in the situation in one of these places is going to be bad from the hurricane coming in, from whatever the case may be. If there's rain down in Tampa Bay, in Tennessee, something from the hurricane coming up, then maybe it's a different story, because you don't want to bank on these deep threats in that situation, where it should be clear up here in Chicago. So, I mean, that would be the only difference. But I'm not banking on weather. You play your best situation, and that's what he's got. With Charlie, you could look at Nelson Aguilar. He had a decent game with New England. He's the top wide receiver there. Mac Jones was targeting him, was looking his way. 7 targets, 5 catches for 72 and a touchdown. I would take that most weeks from my flex spot. Is that better than Boyd? It might be.
Against the Bears? Do you see what our secondary did this week?
Yeah, but I just with Higgins, with Chase, is Boyd going to be the odd man out? He had 4 targets last week, and Higgins was out for a while with this dehydration issue. If that didn't happen, does he get 4 targets and 3 catches? I mean, I see Aguilar as a more consistent target than Boyd. So I would lean Aguilar over Tyler Boyd here, even against a bad Bears defense. Aguilar has the Jets, and the Jets are an okay defense. I'm not gonna say they're the best defense in the league. So I'm still gonna take Jeremy to win this one regardless. Boyer, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, it's rough that he has Robinson on the bench. That's probably his Jeremy's bench guy. But he's got a good matchup. I mean, Cincinnati doesn't have a great defense, so it kind of stinks that his matchups didn't work out to where he could play the matchup and maybe make out here a little bit. But Robinson's going to be on the bench. I think that's probably the best move. And I'm with Ty. I think I'd go with Aguilar. I think he gets 8 targets versus Tyler Boyd's 4 or 5 next week, and I'll take the volume right now if you can. I don't think Boyd has big upside either. I think that goes to Chase or Higgins on big plays. So it's not like you play Boyd to try and get some crazy upside, 2 touchdowns, 100 yards or something stupid. I don't think that happens. I think Aguilar is the safer, easier play here. I do pick Jeremy as the winner of the matchup.
All right. Do me a favor and jump into Andy versus Robbie here, Boyer.
Oh, Andy versus Robbie. That sounds like a fun matchup. Let's
the first one on our set notes before you and your dog had to go shit.
I didn't have to. The dog said, hey.
You were gone. I just assumed that you took care of whatever you needed to.
He was being a dad. Maybe he was just being a dog dad, but it was fine.
All right. So looking at the matchup between Andy and Robbie, Justin Herbert's going to look for a kind of a bounce back against Dallas. Russell Wilson's got that apparently bad Tennessee defense. That'll be interesting. Wide receiver wise, Andy, you have Mike Williams slated at wide receiver 2. Is that going to hold?
That's my expectation right now. I really like the Chargers this week, so I'm hoping to double down on that and get a little bit of lift because I do think that Russell Wilson has a big game, but I'll let you keep breaking it down.
Yeah, Williams had, I believe, 12 targets last week. Dallas's defense looked better against the Bucs last week than they did in 2020, but they're still a Dallas defense, so I don't think that's terrible. Meanwhile, right now, Robbie has Devonta Parker as his wide receiver 2. So I'd give the edge to Andy on that one, although it'll be interesting to see what Tyler Heineke and Terry McLaurin can do week 2. Andy's got Chubb and Hunt running the 1-2s in Cleveland at running back. Robbie's got Henry and Jacobs. Andy has the tight ends Kelsey, tight ends Hawkinson in the flex. And Robbie will be rolling out Higbee against Indianapolis. Could be a rough matchup. And Harris there in his flex against the Jets. They both play kickers and defenses, which sounds good. Boys, who do you got?
I'm going to go with me, but this is going to be a tough one. Robbie's running backs have tough matchups, but I think his Henry and Jacobs have tough matchups. I think Damian Harris and Russell Wilson are going to have big games, and that's going to give Robbie a competitive week here. But I'm hoping that Chubb and Hunt in garbage time get me some bonus points there, and then Justin Herbert should have a nice day against the Cowboys defense. So I'm giving me the edge.
All right. Yeah. So I don't see Thielen doing anything like he had last week. The Bengals didn't get any pressure. Cousins had all day to throw for the most part. Thielen benefited from it. Based on last week, Arizona's defense looks good. We all might have underrated them a little bit. And if they can put pressure on, I think this is going to affect Thielen a lot. So I think that's a downside play this week, but he doesn't really have anybody else to play there. So that's your play.
Beckham if he's healthy, but the Browns are probably going to be up in that game.
Well, that's what we said last week about Jacksonville, but I trust the Browns. I don't trust Jacksonville anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, but even then, Parker against Buffalo, I still don't like the pass game from Miami. They've got Fuller coming back. They've got Waddle. They got Parker. You got Gesicki. Assuming they want to use him. So I mean, you got a lot of weapons. Is Parker the guy? I don't think he's going to be the main target there. I think Foley's going to come in and take away from that. And I think Andy's just got way too much firepower. I think Andy's only real question would be Javonte Williams against Jacksonville. He did get 14 carries last week. Melvin Gordon had more yards, but Gordon also ripped off a long run to kind of pad the stats. But against Houston, I think you got to play both Chubb and Hunt. They both produced last week against Kansas City. They'll produce again this week against Houston. So I think you've got to go that route. Javonte Williams is going to take another couple weeks to really pan out, I think. So, but Andy's still getting a win on this one.
Any consideration for Robbie Anderson over Mike Williams?
No, not this week. Against Dallas, I like Mike Williams. I think it's gonna be a shootout. Both teams can score points. And Williams is gonna get targeted. Do I think he's gonna get 12, 13 targets like he did last week? Probably not. No. But he does get deeper targets. He catches 2 or 3 of them, and he'll be fine for a handful of yards, possible touchdown. Where Robbie Anderson, to be honest with you, he had one big play this week, and that was it. He had one catch, 57 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, yeah, it's good on the stat line for the 57 yards and a touchdown, but 3 targets, 1 reception. Terrace Marshall got targets. McCaffrey is going to continue to soak up targets. I just don't trust Robbie Anderson. So I'm playing Mike Williams over him.
So I will say I'm not worried at all about Robbie Anderson's volume in week 1. I still believe in him as a player, but just looking at matchups, Mike Williams against Dallas versus Robbie Anderson going up against the Saints, who just shut down Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I think Sam Darnold's probably going to do worse than Aaron Rodgers in general. So I don't like that matchup. But going forward, I don't have concerns with Robbie Anderson's low volume in week 1. I think that was more of a fluke and taking what they gave him than something that is going to be carried forward.
You don't think that Terrace Marshall's 6 targets versus Robbie Anderson's 3s at all concerning?
Not after 1 week.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'll add to that is that I really like the strategy that Andy's employing here for the Chargers stack. I like Herbert to rebound against Dallas. I mean, he had a good game last week. He just didn't get touchdowns, which is why he only had 13 points. And you have to expect he'll throw touchdowns at some point this season. And against Dallas is a good bet. Andy's matchups look really good. And he's set up to win. McLaurin's really only his bad matchup. Meanwhile, Robbie has pretty much all bad matchups, dealing against what looks like a tough Arizona, Devontae Parker against a decent Bills defense, Derrick Henry against Seattle is meh, and he didn't look great. Jacobs against Pittsburgh doesn't look great. Higbee against Indianapolis. Like, these are all rough matchups for Robbie. So I have Andy winning this relatively handily.
Thanks.
All right, so let's jump over to Chris and Colin. We're going to run down Chris here real quick. He's got Jalen Hurts at quarterback playing San Fran this week. He's going to come back down a little bit. He had a great week, putting up 28 fantasy points in our platform. I'm not sure he's going to do that against San Francisco. Granted, San Francisco did give up quite a bit at the end of the game, but they led all game. I think they're going to shut down Hurts a little bit more. So that one's going to be rough. But then you get Devontae Adams against Detroit. That's going to be a big bounce back game for Green Bay. You got Kamara against Carolina. That defense isn't great. Melvin Gordon has Jacksonville. Assuming Gordon gets some main workload, I think he'll be fine. I mean, they're still going to split carries. But Gordon showed that he can do it still and still be the 1A for the time being. And then he's got Jamar Chase on the bench against Chicago, which could very well be a start if he wants to get rid of James Robinson, maybe against Denver. He's got Corey Davis on the bench that could possibly go in. Would you guys make a move, Chase or Davis in there for like a James Robinson or Melvin Gordon? Or do you just leave that be with where he's at?
I am on record being very high on the Denver defense. They did very well against Saquon in week 1. Granted, Saquon's kind of banged up still, but between the usage issues that we've already mentioned with James Robinson, the absolutely horrible performance by the Jaguars in week 1, and then the fact that Jamar Chase had 7 catches, no drops, and is going up against the Bears secondary that just got made fools of on national television Sunday night. I'm putting Jamar Chase in at the flex, bumping Melvin Gordon up to RB2 and benching Robinson for this week and making him prove that he's getting the touches. Hopefully Urban Meyer leaves for college and fixes that for us.
I would 100% agree with you. Boyer, anything else to add on that one?
Jamar Chase looked like he could see the ball just fine last week. That's another thank you to our beat writers for reporting that. So I would agree.
Okay. All right, let's do a quick rundown of Collins' team. Collins got Stafford against Indy, looking like a good matchup there. Diggs against Miami. Hopkins against Minnesota. Could be a good matchup. That defense didn't look great. You get Najee against Las Vegas, which Tyson Williams did just fine against. Latavius Murray did just fine against. Assuming Pittsburgh O-line can do anything this week and keep Najee moving forward, he could be okay. I think Najee could put up 80 yards and a touchdown this week. Is he going to get to 100? I don't know. 80 and a touchdown would be all right. If that's your RB1, RB2, not a super high ceiling, but it'll do, assuming the rest of your team with Hopkins, Diggs, Stafford can put up good weeks. You got Jonathan Taylor against the Rams. That one could be tough. The Rams defense looked good, but Montgomery put up a decent showing. He was about the only one on that offense that did well. So Taylor could do it. You got Fant against Jacksonville. That looks good. Right now he's got Will Fuller in his flex against Buffalo. But other than that, really his only other option is Ayuk if he comes back, but I don't think you can play Ayuk this week. Hollywood Brown against Kansas City. I can't see him doing that. Jalen Waddle against Buffalo. With Fuller there, I mean, you've got the option of Fuller or Waddle. Who do you think is going to score more? And I think, with four receptions, 61 yards and a touchdown last week for Waddle, he's not a bad play, but once again, I think Fuller's the veteran going to come in. He's going to get more targets, more looks. So I would keep Fuller there. You guys got any roster things you would change? San Fran against Philly, Washington against New York Giants. I think you have to play Washington. He's got 2 defenses, so I'll throw that out there.
I've got Hollywood in over Will Fuller. I think that is a better matchup. Hollywood had a fine week 1. There was only 6 targets, but he caught all 6 of them. He caught a touchdown. It should be a higher scoring game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense is average. So I think that game script looks good for the Ravens there, as opposed to trying to guess which Dolphins receiver, Waddle or Fuller, and then B, hope that they do something against Buffalo's defense, which is pretty good defense still. So I'm not interested in that. I'd rather roll with Brown and hope for the shootout and the touchdown there.
Yeah, that's fair. Boyer, anything on that? You could also talk Joe Burrow against Chicago, but I think Matt Stafford against Indy is the play. So anything you want to throw out there?
I think you roll with Stafford until he proves that he's not the quarterback we all think he's going to be with the Rams. I would agree with Andy. Watching the game last night, Marquise Brown he wasn't just a burner that he was last year where he was boom or bust. Some of those catches were on slant routes and curl routes where he was more possession based. It's going to give him a much better floor than he had last year. So I don't mind rolling the dice with him because the dice roll is now not so weighted towards a low floor. Will Fuller, we don't know what shape he's going to be in coming back. We don't know how he's going to fit into the first team offense. I think I'd probably play Waddle over him just for the safety's sake because he looked involved, and they looked like they wanted to get him involved. He was even though he wasn't targeted all that much, he was around the ball, and I would anticipate that continue because he's got some big play potential. So for me, if I'm ranking those options, I'm going Hollywood, Waddle, Fuller, at least until I know what Fuller can do. It might completely flip starting week three if Fuller really blows the top off the team. Washington against the Giants for sure. Dan Jones turns the ball over too much to not play Washington.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think if you're deciding between Miami receivers, I've got Waddle ahead of Fuller until I see differently. Waddle looked really good in week 1. His routes were pretty clean. And then he's got the past relationship with Tua, which needs to be accounted for. I mean, Will Fuller, part of his fantasy value was because he had a really strong relationship with Deshaun Watson. A lot of people thought Watson was going to go to Miami. That didn't happen. Tua's there. Tua's the quarterback, and Waddle's one of his guys from college. So that means something. And then I will say, I don't know that I've got the cojones to start Burrow over Stafford. But Stafford put up 24 fantasy points last Sunday night against the Bears. And of those 24 fantasy points, 13 of them came on 2 plays against real ugly coverage where 2 guys got deep for deep touchdowns. Now, that's not to say that he couldn't have got those points if those drives were extended or whatever, but you take away 2 long touchdowns against a bad secondary that didn't seem interested in covering or tackling anybody, and you're looking at 11 points in fantasy. So assuming that he doesn't do that against the Colts defense, which is decent. I mean, they didn't look great against Seattle, but Seattle's a hell of a lot better than the Rams, in my opinion, when it comes to throwing the ball. Then, maybe Burrow gets those long touchdowns against the crap Bears secondary and outperforms Stafford this week. That doesn't mean that Colin should be making that swap in his lineup, but there's that possibility. If this was a week that Colin was playing somebody like Paul, where he's projected to lose by 10 and he really wanted to swing for the fences, then I could see swapping Burrow in and hoping that you get that big game. But I think I'd leave it with Stafford. I just wanted to call that out, that's a possibility.
Yeah, just to jump in real quick on the Waddle connection with Tua. NFL teams are looking at that. Clearly, we've got Devonta Smith going to the Eagles with Hurts, who he's played with. We've got Chase going to Burrow for his guy. Waddle with Tua now with his guy. So that is a really good point, Andy. I think that
don't forget sexual partners Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm gonna keep Fuller in. He was on PEDs. We're the PEDs. I'm gonna just roll with it. I feel like we're on brand. So Will Fuller is gonna go ahead and be my start for the week.
We got to get these guys to guest show up on. Can we do one of the cameos? Can we get him on a cameo? Not telling him what it's for.
I mean, I think the whole point of cameo is that you tell him what it's for.
No, we'll tell him it's like a birthday or something for a guy named Ped.
All right. Anyway, who's winning this matchup? Let's get back to fantasy here. Who's winning this matchup, man?
Yeah, this one's gonna be tough. I think it's gonna be close. I'm gonna go with Colin.
All right, Andy, what do you got?
This is a tough one. I am leaning toward Colin too, but this is going to be a tight matchup. This is my matchup of the week. So, but I am leaning Colin.
Okay. I am going to lean Chris on this one. Although I'm not big on Hurts this week. I think Adams, even Tunyon against Detroit, Kamara against Carolina, I think there's enough firepower there to kind of keep up, and I think there are some good matchups on Chris' side. So I'm gonna go Chris, as much as I'd like to see Colin win and both of them go 1-1. So all right. So let's get into our favorite segment of the night. Pow! What are you drinking? What do you got, Andy? Well, that's not fancy.
No, it's not fancy. This is a Shiner Bock. I did not have the time or materials to make a fancy cocktail, so Old Faithful over here.
Fair enough. Boy, what are you on? Old Faithful with Natty?
No, Goose Island came out with an Oktoberfest, so I gave it a shot.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
How
he's
is
not
it?
buying a house anymore, so he's got beer money.
Yeah, that's a pipe dream. I think I'm buying a refrigerator box at this point. Maybe 2 if we're lucky.
Double wide refrigerator box.
How's your Oktoberfest on the beer note?
Yeah, how is it?
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, talking about Old Faithful, we're gonna kick it off with a little Coors Light over here, since that's still what's in my fridge.
Andy, I'm 90% sure that he's getting Coors money at this point.
I am
It's
getting a
every
little
single
irked.
it's every single week practically. He pulls one out even when he's drinking other beer. He pulls one out and mentions Coors Light. He's getting beer money for sure. We need to sue him under the table for the $10 that he's getting a week.
How do you guys think I fund this internet I got?
This is how he's paying for his mobile, his cell phone bill, because he's doing it from the cell phone nowadays.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Anyway, let's move on to not making fun of my
See
internet.
him just sweep that under
Yep.
the rug, like I'm not
See that.
making money.
I'm not
Didn't
making
even
money at all.
acknowledge it.
It's just whatever. Let's talk fantasy football, guys. It's what we're here for.
You and I got to start drinking Coors and see if the checks start coming in.
All right.
Seems
Boyer,
not fair that I have to
Boyer.
drink Coors.
Boyer, do me a favor.
Sorry,
and
Coors.
Jump into mine and Paul's matchup here for me.
Yeah, let me pull that
Not a
up.
Not a sponsor, clearly.
Not
All
an,
right.
an Andy and Boyer sponsor.
All right, so let me I'm just gonna recap this real quick. Paul's gonna win. Wait, what? All right, so Ty has Prescott going up against Ty's got Prescott against the Chargers. Paul has Mahomes against Baltimore. Feels relatively even. I agree with Andy that that's probably going to be a shootout. Moving on to wide receivers, you got Lamb also against the Chargers, Tyreek Hill also against Baltimore. Starting to feel like that game those 2 games are going to be kind of big for this matchup here. Metcalf against Tennessee and Deontay Johnson versus the Raiders for Paul. I'm liking Ty's wide receivers. They were good last week. I think that they're going to continue to be good. Gibson with a tough matchup against the Giants at running back for Ty. Yeah, he's currently got Swift in against Green Bay. Looking over at Paul, he's got McCaffrey against New Orleans and Aaron Jones against Detroit. Ty's got Jonnu at tight ends against the Jets. Meanwhile, we got Goddard at San Francisco. So that'll be a super fun tight end matchup to watch. The 3 points they'll get between the 2 of them.
Still have Hawkinson over here if anybody wants to come talking trades.
I have Cole Kmet too. It's fine.
I mean, hey, that might be a good bet to play him. Higgins is in Ty's flex against Chicago. Paul has Edmonds against Minnesota, and then they both start kickers and defenses. Tampa, I guess the one notable here is the Buccaneers do have Atlanta. Atlanta didn't look real great. They looked pretty anemic for most of the game, especially in where the Eagles were scoring a lot of points. The Falcons just did not look interested in throwing the ball to try and match them. So that could be something for Paul. He's not going to need it. This one's going to Paul. So who do you guys got winning this one?
I really want to pick Ty, but Paul's team is just too good. I think it's good for Ty that he's got Tyreek. So if Mahomes has a big game, hopefully he's getting that back. I like Gibson's matchup against the Giants. I like Swift against the Packers. I like Higgins against the Bears, assuming Ty keeps Barkley on his bench, which apparently we're going to have to wait and talk about that being a good decision here in a couple minutes. But Jesus, Paul has Mahomes. Paul has Metcalf against the crap Titans secondary we've already talked about. Paul has McCaffrey. Paul has Aaron Jones against the Lions run defense, which isn't great. Like Paul's team's too good. I think I have to take Paul here. I want to take you, Ty, but you're playing Paul. I'm sorry.
At some point, we're gonna have to pick against Paul.
I don't think that's gonna be smart.
So I'm with Andy here. I think Gibson is a good matchup this week. I took the over on his 63 rush yards. That's up right now. So I think
Melvin Gordon did that in one play.
Right. So I like Andy said, I like Gibson. I like Swift. If Prescott and Lamb can connect for some decent yardage, I think I have a shot. Like Andy said, Higgins against Chicago. I mean, Chicago's defense just was awful this week. Assuming that there are holes all over it like there was in week one, Higgins is still gonna get. I mean, he had 4 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown this last week, but he was out for a while, sat out all of overtime when he went down with that dehydration issue. But he was a heavily targeted early on and could very well hit 7 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown this week.
Yep.
So it's tough. I want to pick myself as well, but I think it all comes down to, I think Lamb would have to have at least 2 touchdowns, and what I'm hoping is a shootout with LA and Dallas, and then Tyreek would have to siphon at least 2 touchdowns out of Mahomes to counterbalance that. So I think it's a stretch. I think I could do it, but I'm not going to pick myself. So there you go, Paul. As much as I hate you and you suck, you're going to win this week.
Ty, you got Barkley on the bench. You want to roll through that thought process?
Washington's defense is phenomenal. The Giants just looked bad last week, and I think after this week it becomes more of a question of to play Barkley or not to play Barkley. Week 3 they get Atlanta. Week 4 they get New Orleans. Then they get Dallas. They start getting a little bit of a softer schedule. So I think this week they'll limit him again against a tough defense. I think it's going to become a pass-happy offense due to game script, where Gibson is going to be running all over them. Giants are going to have to throw the ball. Barkley will get limited. I think I have to keep Higgins in there. As much as I want to play Barkley at the price I drafted him at, I think it's going to be another week before I can do it.
Yep, I agree with you, Ty. I mean, he's still limited in practice, which is probably them just keeping him safe. But I mean, the knee's an issue. The defense is good there against Washington, and you've got some pieces that you can feel okay rolling out instead of him. So I would have him on the bench. I want to flip over to Paul here and say that after week 1, not trying to overreact to week 1, but I would play Debo over Chase Edmonds. What do you guys think?
Oh, I thought Boyer was running it, so that's why I didn't go that far yet.
No, that's okay.
I love Debo. All off season, I've been a Debo truther over Ayuk. So over Edmonds. I guess it really depends upon what he wants, because I think Debo gives you a higher ceiling. Does Edmonds? James Conner didn't look great last week. Edmonds still got rushes, still got some passing volume. That offense is really good. I think Edmonds could be the safer floor if that's what he thinks he needs against me. But
Yeah,
I
that's
would
a good point. Paul being
personally, I would,
projected to
like,
win by 15, just lock in the floor. Don't give back your advantage. I know we talked about that a lot last week, so I feel that. But as a aspiring fantasy football dad analyst, I just want to say that I would take Debo over Edmonds in a vacuum. But Paul, lock in your floor. Ty's right.
same. I would take Debo if, especially if I'm going for the upside. If I'm going for the big play guy, I'm going Debo. But because Paul has so many big play guys, Chase would probably be my play this week against myself. So
Yep, that's probably fair.
I would put Debo over Deontay Johnson.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson sees a lot of targets, but he only caught 5 of them last week. He was bailed out really by a touchdown. And I think the Raiders pass rush is for real. I don't think that what we saw against Baltimore defensively was an aberration or a mirage. I think they're going to have a decent enough defense, and it's going to be led by that pass rush. And we know that the Steelers' offensive line is hot garbage. So I'm worried that Deontay Johnson is going to get another 10 or 11 targets, but all being close to the line of scrimmage, not a lot of high value stuff. And Debo's going to get more down the field work. He's going to be more involved in the game plan. I think if you're looking for floor, despite volume, I'd actually go for Debo over in that wide receiver 2 spot.
So I agree with everything you said except for the floor argument, because I think that the coverage of the Raiders compared to the Bills is a solid step down. So Deontay is going to be catching these balls. If he gets 10, 12 targets, he's going to catch 8 or 9 of them. And even if he only gets 50 yards and no touchdowns, that's your floor. And Debo has some boom bust potential.
he also has Shanahan.
Yeah, I mean, Ayuk could be out of the doghouse and healthy and good to go and completely screw you over. The beat writers aren't going to tell us until the game starts, so who knows? But I think the volume that Deontay is going to get is going to make it hard to take him out of Paul's lineup. But again, I like Debo. I like all the arguments that you're making, but I like Deontay for the floor because of the volume.
Yeah, I mean, Debo saw 12 targets last week, which is more than Deontay Johnson. So
that's true. I don't expect that to happen every week.
I know Ayuk is, still looming there, but he saw 0 targets. I can't imagine that the script is going to be flipped that quick. So for this week, I'm okay with Debo at wide receiver 2. I think his floor is there. Maybe in a couple weeks, once we know Ayuk is a little healthier and Shanahan wants to get him more involved, we would change our tune. But for this week specifically, I think I would definitely put Samuel in.
All right, I want to put it on tape, because if I go back and check on the accuracy, I like Deontay Johnson better than Debo Samuel this week. I like the upside of Debo more than Chase Edmonds, but the floor Chase Edmonds. So I'm going to stick with Edmonds in the lineup for floor purposes. But gun to my head, if I had to rank the 3, I've got Deontay, Debo, Edmonds.
See, I'm with Boyer. I'm not high on Deontay, but at the same time, you got to look at Ayuk ran routes, right? Him and Sherfield split.
He
routes.
played. Yeah, he played.
Right.
It's not
they split it like 24 and 25 routes. They both ran routes. All right. Sherfield was targeted, whatever. But here's my downside to Debo. All right. I love Debo. You should be playing Debo because he's a good player. But Kittle only had 5 targets and 4 receptions. That is not going to be consistent. Kittle will get more targets moving forward, and that's going to eat into Debo too.
To be fair, the 49ers only also had to throw so many times against the Lions because they were up so early and so often on them. In a more competitive game against Philly, we might see more targets where you could see Debo still getting 12 and Kittle getting closer to the 10 target option. So I think it balances out.
No, absolutely. I don't disagree, but the fact that Kittle only had 5 targets is kind of crazy to me. So we'll see. I'm taking, if I had to go straight up, my ceiling plays, I'm taking Debo, I'm taking Edmonds, and then Deontay. I don't like Deontay. I haven't liked Deontay. I think with the other options there, I just don't trust any straight receiver in that offense. So there you go. That's how I feel. I might be completely wrong, but I was right the most last week. So take it for what it's worth. I gotta keep calling it out before I get too far. All right, let's jump to the duo and Walker. We spent a lot of time on that match.
We did. That's all right.
Andy.
Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. I got excited because we were talking a lot. Okay, duo and Walker. Probably not as much time needs to be spent on this one. Rodgers for Walker. Rodgers is going to have a good bounce back game because he's got a ego trip this whole thing, and it's a Monday night game. I've got issues with Julio. Pitts, I think, does a little bit more. Mike Davis against Tampa is a horrible matchup. Montgomery and Antonio Brown and Amari Cooper are Walker's core players, which means that he's probably going to lose because that is not a strong enough core to keep up with most teams. Calvin Ridley against Tampa is a great matchup. Josh Allen should have a better game. And then just some of the other players on the duos team, Chris Carson, Miles Sanders, Logan Thomas, Jarvis Landry, I'm not super jazzed about, but I think they've got enough to beat Walker here. So I'm going to go duo. You got to get Sutton in the lineup. I've got Sutton over Landry easy, even if OBJ sits again. Having Judy be down, I want Sutton in my lineup almost every week. I don't think there's any other real lineup decisions for the duo, but and then on Walker's side, he's got DJ Chark against the Denver secondary. I'm not touching that. Leonard Fournette against Atlanta, maybe to get Mike Davis out of the lineup. I might roll those dice. You never know what Tampa's going to do with their running backs and what the volume is going to be. But I mean, Tampa's run defense is stout. We all saw it last year. If week one was any indication, I don't want to start any running back against Tampa's defense, let alone a Mike Davis. So I think getting Fournette in there just for the upside, because with Mike Davis there is none, might be a good choice. But I don't like a lot of Walker's team and matchups this week, so I'm going with the duo. Ty, what do you think?
Yeah.
Astute analysis, sir.
It's rough. I mean, I definitely like the duos team better. Allen, Ridley, Woods. I mean, I'm not high on any of the four running backs in this matchup. Carson's probably my favorite against Tennessee, followed by Montgomery, maybe Montgomery over Carson. But to be honest, I don't like any of the four of them. So really it's going to come down to, I think the wide receivers and Josh Allen are going to be able to hold off Walker's, Rodgers, Cooper, Brown, Antonio Brown. Logan Thomas is going to get the bump, I think, with Heineke coming in. So, I mean, I'm not high on Pitts. I think he is going to get a little bit more work this week if Tampa can give Ryan any time to throw the ball. So, I mean, Philly shut down Atlanta. What says Tampa Bay can't just tear apart Matt Ryan this week? Andy said it. I'm not big on Julio Jones either. I just don't like Walker's team. We've talked about it over and over. I'm going to take the duo, and the duo's got some options with Smith-Schuster. If you want to go that route, I already said I'm not playing Deontay, so I'm not playing Juju. Cortland Sutton is the guy, especially against Jacksonville, like Andy said. I like Rondale Moore coming up, but I think it's going to be another couple weeks before he really sees a higher volume. But I like the bench stash at the time being. So Duo is going to take this one. Not a whole lot of analysis needed. Go ahead, Boyer.
Duo needs to get Sutton in the lineup. That's for sure. Looking at Walker's team, I'm not sure I like Julio a lot. I think in the flex, I might play AJ Green. Wait, what? No. I'm sorry. I was time traveling back like 6 years. That's my bad. Keep Julio in. Looking at Mike Davis and Leonard Fournette, though, I will make the point. Like, I feel like Mike Davis with the volume is going to have a higher floor than Fournette. Fournette had the majority of the work last week after Ronald Jones fumbled. Ronald Jones historically doesn't get a lot of work the game after he fumbles with Bruce Arians. So Fournette's probably good for the work. But he didn't do a whole lot with the work he was given. So I think the floor goes to Mike Davis and the volume there. The benefit that Walker has is that they're the 3 o'clock games. You can see how the 12 o'clock games work out in the matchup. And if he wants the floor, I think he can go with Mike Davis. If he wants the upside where, you might get a couple touchdowns out of Fournette because that's just the Buccaneers game plan or whatever, then you can go with Fournette. So I think he's got some options. I don't think it's going to matter too much. I think the duo is going to take this one. Walker's back half of his team just doesn't look good.
Yeah, good call on the afternoon games and being able to make that decision with a little bit more information. In terms of being in the doghouse for the Buccaneers, Fournette didn't have anything in the box score, but he definitely helped an interception along to the defense there in that game too. So I don't know that that's going to hurt, that the fumble is going to hurt Ronald Jones as much since Fournette had a giveaway in my eyes as well, but who knows?
Hey, your beat writers are saying Ronald Jones out of the doghouse.
So
don't trust those assholes.
So do the opposite. Just go for Fournette. He's going to get all the work.
All right. So duo, go ahead and win this one. We all got you picked. We're gonna jump into Fryer versus Boyer. Fryer has Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool, I'm gonna say is a startable option this week, although I don't like Pittsburgh receivers, just for the sake of he doesn't really have another option at this point. Laviska Shenault would be his other option, but we'll get to that in a minute. He's got Tyson Williams against Kansas City, Dalvin Cook, George Kittle, and he's got Trey Sermon in his flex at this point. So you got Claypool, Sermon, and Shenault. I guess you could say James Conner. But after last week, I'm not really going to put Conner in the flex situation at this point. I almost think, well, I guess maybe you could play James Conner over them. Do you guys start Sermon and hope that he plays, or are you starting maybe a Shenault against Denver? I mean, I think he's going to hit the waiver wire, and I don't think it's an issue. Brian Edwards could be an option. And I guess if it becomes they're playing a Pittsburgh defense, I might take a shot on Brian Edwards this week. I don't like Laviska against Denver. The only downfall to playing anybody in Las Vegas is Waller's getting 20 targets a game, and it doesn't even matter. So I'm playing Edwards this week. What are you guys doing with that flex spot, other than hitting the waiver wire?
Go ahead, Boyer.
Oh man, I have no idea, to be honest. This is a awkward position for Fry to be in. I would think Sermon's going to get work. He'll be active this time around. He won't be suddenly just not available at all. But they'll probably be more of a committee in San Francisco than anything else. I like Shenault. I think that he's a little bit more matchup proof based on the type of player he is. They tend to get him involved around the line of scrimmage on screen plays and end arounds. Sometimes even just handoffs, aside from his work as a receiver. So knowing that I think Fry's got a easier matchup here, I would go with a floor of a guy like Chenault, I think, and make sure you don't lose it on a goose egg somewhere that you're expecting volume for Sermon and it's for whatever reason just isn't there, whether it's due to injury because of the 49ers or because they're on a committee and everyone gets 5 carries a piece or whatever it is. I would go with Chenault because we know he'll get volume and Fry's got a winnable matchup. You don't want to lose it on making a upside play that doesn't pan out.
Yep, great call. I am going to agree with all of that except for the whole Chenault bit. Play James Conner in your flex. I think Trey Sermon has a lot of upside. I think that whatever we don't know about that put him in the doghouse is probably over now that they don't have Raheem Mostert anymore. So he'll be playing next week and he'll be getting some sort of touches. And I'm sure he'll be looking to do something with those touches to prove that the coaches made a bad decision in benching him last week and putting him at 4th on the depth chart effectively. So I like Trey Sermon next week, but everything Boyer said about Fryer having an easier matchup this week and wanting to lock in a higher floor still holds. I'm not playing Chenault against the Denver secondary, even if he does catch everything at the line of scrimmage. Denver's defense is legit. Chenault is probably the 3rd option on his team, given what we saw last week. So James Conner against the Vikings defense, which isn't great. James Conner led the Cardinals in carries last week. He had 16 to Edmonds 12. I think that there's a solid floor there, touchdown upside and all that. James Conner's who I want in my flex if I'm Fryer.
I don't feel like James Conner did much last week, so I'm going to go with the upside play, although he doesn't need it. Although it contradicts everything I've said earlier about the floor play and that flex. So there you go. All right, so run down Boyer's team real quick. Before we run anywhere, Winston versus Carolina or Cousins versus Arizona? You guys are both playing Winston against Carolina, I'm assuming. No? Maybe?
That's tough. They're both on the road. Arizona's defense looked really good last week. But Winston only had 148 yards, 5 touchdowns. Great. He definitely did it, and he did what he needed to in that game. And, he got every bit of the fantasy production that he could have, I assume. But 148 yards, I'm not banking on 5 touchdowns every week. So I'm a little bit weary there, but I do think that he's got the better matchup. I'm gonna say Boyer needs the upside here, and I'm gonna say that the upside is Kirk Cousins.
Boyer, what are you leaning on there?
So I'm assuming that's a waiver sit tonight, right?
By the time that this airs, everyone will have known who you picked up. Who you picking up?
So I'm going hard for a couple different guys. Mitchell
at quarterback.
A lot of running backs that I'm going hard.
Oh, we're just talking about quarterbacks right now. Don't spoil it.
Yeah, hold on. So because I'm going after them, I can't hold 2 quarterbacks. I'm going to go with Winston on his upside as a big play. I don't have a lot of firepower on my team. I essentially don't have a 1st round pick. I need Winston to work out. I don't think Cousins is a back end quarterback 1 throughout the season. That sounds great if you're Paul, because you have literally everybody else on your team that can score. I have nobody on my team that can score consistently high. So I'm hoping that Winston, pulls out a Tampa Bay Buccaneers 30 touchdowns, hopefully less interceptions type of season. And I'm going to cut Cousins and bring in some running back help because it's very clearly that I need it. So I'll be playing Winston. There's going to be no choice.
All right.
Interesting. I think that's a mistake.
With that, I would agree with Andy. I think I'd keep Cousins in the long run.
I think Cousins will be available on the waiver wire whenever I want him.
That's possible.
Andy's looking to pick him up right now just to piss you off.
I mean, that's fine. There's plenty of.
I
other
like the guys
quarterbacks,
on my bench better than Cousins, so I won't do it. But
right?
All
if
right.
anybody needs a quarterback, piss off Boyer.
I'll say there's plenty of other quarterbacks I like that are available on waivers. Cousins,
12
like I
team,
said,
one quarterback league gets available.
Cousins is
Also-
a classic back end quarterback one at best, and I'm gonna go for the upside because I have to for this year. If I don't, then I'm gonna end up being naked before I sell anybody.
I love that you won in week 1, but you're like, oh shit, I gotta buy me a new team.
All right, let's keep moving down Boyer's roster here. So he has DJ Moore against New Orleans, Cooper Kupp against Indy. He's got Brandon Cooks on the bench, Terrace Marshall on the bench. You're not making a change there. He's got Edwards-Helaire and Ronald Jones currently in his starting running back spots. He has Jamal Williams and Michael Carter on his bench, and Nyheim Hines in his flex. So there could be a move there. I'm looking at Jamal Williams against Green Bay. I think Jamal Williams against Green Bay, probably for me, I would play him over maybe Nyheim Hines or Ronald Jones. I would probably give Jones another week that they're playing Atlanta. I would probably sit Nyheim Hines and put Jamal Williams in, just because Detroit seems to, I mean, so does Indy, but I think Detroit's going to need that second back to help Swift. They need more weapons. I'm going to go Jamal Williams over Hines. You're clearly playing Waller in the tight end position, so that doesn't matter. So, Andy, what are you doing with this running back situation? Jones, Hines, Williams, Carter.
So if it's my team, I'm playing Williams over Ronald Jones, and I'm playing Brandon Cooks over Nyheim Hines. Cooks getting the garbage time looks for Houston, I think has a lot of upside. He had 132 yards last week. There might not be a touchdown in it, but I think over 100 yards is definitely in the cards for him. So if he does get that touchdown, then that's a pretty big week for you, and that's what you're hoping for. Williams, Green Bay's run defense isn't great, so I like Williams for that reason, and I think that he'll be on the field a lot. They'll be playing from behind. The Detroit backfield both had a lot of targets last week, so there's just volume there between Swift and Williams both getting theirs. If you're shooting for the stars, then maybe Ronald Jones. You're playing Fryer, so the upside argument still holds water, but like if you were playing Paul, I would say Ronald Jones, and you got to hope for big runs and 2 touchdowns and all of that. But you're playing Fryer, you're not playing Paul. You don't need to make up 25 points on your projection right here. You're only trying to cover 10 points. So I would lean with Williams over Ronald Jones at that RB2 spot.
Where are your thoughts here?
So I am going hard after Elijah Mitchell. I think I would slot him in at running back 2. If I did, I think he would be first in line for the majority touches there in San Francisco to start. If I don't get him, it would probably be Jamal Williams. I don't trust Ronald Jones coming off the fumble. I can't afford another negative 0.6 points from my running back 2 position. Nyheim Hines did have 17 touches, not from targets, touches last week. So obviously the Colts want to get him involved. I like him a lot. I am on the fence between him and Cooks. There'll be some decisions to be made. I don't really know what I would do in that case, but if I were able to get Elijah Mitchell, it'll probably be Mitchell at running back 2 and Jamal Williams in the flex.
Fair enough. I'm playing Ronald Jones. I think he starts. They've got Atlanta. They're going to be in a run script, assuming that that's a thing in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady, and it's not necessarily a thing with Tom Brady because he'll throw 5 touchdowns. But I think you got to start Ronald Jones against Atlanta. He can break one run for 60 yards and a touchdown, and And that's that. I mean, Atlanta's not good. Their defense has never been good.
And we saw Ronald Jones have a rough like game or two last year and then still end up RB16. For me, it's just on a weekly basis. Can I really trust him for this week? And I'm going to say no. That doesn't mean that he might not start for me the rest of the season, especially if he ends up breaking out in Atlanta where I don't play him. But at this point, I don't know. I just can't afford so few points for my running back 2 position. I got bailed out last week by a lot with him doing that. So I think I need something more consistent. Fry's team isn't scary, but it's good enough that I just can't afford to have 0 points because he doesn't get hardly any looks next week.
All right. Fair enough.
Who are you guys picking in this one? Did I miss that?
Nope. I was just about to get to it. So I'm taking Fry. I think we've all we've talked about the upside Boyer needs to cover. Really the only downside right now to Fryer's team is going to be that flex position. I got Fryer on the win.
Boyer, you picking yourself again?
I have too many questions at running back at this point that I can't pick myself. I'm going to go with Fryer. It hurts to say.
If you get Elijah Mitchell, does that change anything for you?
Probably not, because there's still just as many question marks. I mean, the San Francisco backfield could still be an absolute mess. I would expect him to get the start and the majority of looks to start the game, but that doesn't mean that a hot hand approach won't be there. So even if I get him, I like my chances better because it gives me a more, consistent player than what I have, but I still think it's going to be Fryer unless some questions are seriously answered in week 1 or in week 2 for my running back position.
Fair enough. The only we all picked in line with each other down the board, except for the Colin Chris matchup. Ty picked Chris and you and I picked Colin. So
go Colin
variance this week. Yeah. Suck it, Ty.
Yeah, you can't say that yet. Colin hasn't won yet. All right. Boyer, you want to hit us with another new segment that we're working on?
Yeah, it's time for dad jokes. Today we have one and it's short. You guys ready for it?
Yes.
Boyer's wiener.
Oh, got him.
All right, go ahead.
So Ty brought his A game. All right. 6:30 is the best time, hands down.
Right? Yeah. Unless your clock is sideways.
And
You're welcome.
How is that shit funnier than Boyer's crap over there? This is bad.
oh, come on. That
Hey,
was funny.
like and comment if that was a bad dad joke, but also comment with ideas for new segments to replace this one. So if you want this to go away, let us know.
All right, let's hit them with a little power ranking here to get off this bad dad joke segment.
Okay, so not a ton of changes from last week. I've still got Paul at number 1. Looking at his team, Aaron Jones had a terrible week. So did the Tampa Bay defense. Christian McCaffrey didn't have any touchdowns, and Paul still put up 110 points. That's terrifying. Paul's team's the best in the league. I don't see that changing anytime soon, barring a major injury. I do have Jeremy up 1 to number 2 over Ty. As long as he keeps picking the right players, he should be doing good. Ty's issue right now is that $70 or $60 he spent on Saquon, 50 whatever. I don't know. It was a lot. $56 you spent on Saquon.
There was not a lot. It was a value.
Sure. And you still need a tight end.
The 2 points last week showed it.
Yeah.
It was a value.
I mean, at least you played him, unlike Jeremy and Robinson. So Ty's got a good team, but he needs Saquon to be vintage Saquon. He needs a tight end to really get up to Paul's level. But still a good team. I've got me at number 4 still, hoping for a bounce back from Justin Herbert. My wide receivers might be an issue, but I've got, I think, a nicely built team. I've got Fryer at number 5 still. Brady looks great. Tyson Williams looked pretty good. Mostert going down kind of sucks, but he also has Trey Sermon, and that means that he's going to get to go and show what he can do. So Fryer's got a sneaky deep bench, which is going to help him too. I've still got Colin at number 6. Najee's going to have issues behind the Steelers O-line, and Stafford, as I said, got half of his production from 2 busted plays. So I think this is a pretty average team. I've got him at number 6. Chris, kind of the same thing. Tanyan's going to be disappointing. James Robinson's situation's kind of shaky. Jalen Hurts looked really good though, so who knows? You got a really deep wide receiver core. Duo up 1 to number 8. Josh Allen, Calvin Ridley had kind of a bummer of a week, but that's not going to be the norm. Logan Thomas and Robert Woods both ended up having a decent fantasy day because they got the touchdowns, but if they hadn't, then we'd be pretty concerned with what they did. So something to keep an eye on there. I've got Charlie at number 9. Charlie was the lowest score in the league this week. That's not why I dropped him. It feels kind of fluky. Gesicki with the goose egg we talked about. Eckler was the only top 25 ranked running back that didn't have a catch or a target, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's not Eckler. That's the way that the game was given to him from the football team. So I expect that to change. Zeke stayed in to block more often than not against the Tampa defense, and their run defense is really strong. So a lot is going to pivot the other way for Charlie after a bad week 1, but we'll kind of have to see what that looks like when his team's firing on all cylinders. Robbie had a lot of touchdowns this week, but it was like Thielen had 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs had 2 touchdowns and 40 yards or whatever. And then even Russell Wilson had 4 touchdowns and only 250 yards. So I look to the yards and the touches to be an indicator of consistency, whereas the touchdowns, except for like the top guys like, Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook, that is relying on touchdowns week to week, but getting them most weeks, I look to kind of the other stats, the non-touchdown stats, to be an indicator of consistency. And if you look at that stuff for Robbie's team, it wasn't really there this week. So even though he put up almost 110 points, there's some concerning signs there. And then I've got Boyer at 11 still. Cup and Waller balled out. The rest of your team sucks. And then Walker at number 12. Montgomery looks good. Good luck, bud.
Montgomery's your shining star. This is trouble.
Yeah. If a Bears player is your best player, you don't have a good team.
Walker, if me and you combine forces, we might not completely suck. Just a thought.
No, you'd still suck.
I said completely.
All right, fair.
So those are the power rankings. Somebody make a trade so that we have more to talk about next week.
Yes, true.
Jeremy traded Kelsey after week 1 last year, and then traded for Waller right after that. So do something like that.
Something fun, something, just anything really.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Well, maybe it'll happen after this waiver wire goes through. So
Maybe.
All right. On that, I love all of you that like, subscribe, comment. All of you that don't, I hate you and I don't care what's happening in your life. I hope your fantasy season sucks. If you got this far, your performance is already better because you listen to the performance enhancing dads. So you get all the advice you could ever need for the week. Use it, play the guys we tell you to. Other than that, we'll see you next week.